Well, hello. I'm here with Doug to talk about the Salesloft breach and other things. It is Tuesday, September 2, 2025. And so that Salesloft breach, I think, is the big one. I'd never heard of this thing, but Salesloft is some kind of AI product people use to make chatbots to turn these into leads to sell products through the Salesforce system. Although Salesloft is apparently a different company than Salesforce. But apparently it's used by a lot of big
Mm.
companies like Palo Alto Networks and many others, and it got breached. And the technical details of the breach are kind of thin, but it looks like they just found an API key so they could execute queries on Salesloft, and they executed certain select queries, which they tell you, and they got a ton of data, and they're going through that data and finding more API keys. They're finding API keys that let them in everybody's cloud servers, Slack, Google Workspace, Amazon, Azure, and OpenAI. So all these companies are having second and third order effects from this effectively a supply chain attack. They all apparently trusted this sales loft thing to reach their sales force and then to reach some kind of email integration, which had lots of other secrets, which caused all these other things. So it's like dominoes knocking down other dominoes, a chain of things. But reminds me of Log4j. It happened, 5, 6 years ago. This one popular product that
Right.
everybody was using, and it turned out to have really serious vulnerability, and the whole tech community spent about a week scrambling. I remember I had a friend who was working in at federal military agency, and they got told immediately drop everything. By like day after tomorrow, you must have a complete list of every place we're using this product and stop using it right away. So I imagine there's that kind of scramble going on with Salesloft. It seems like people are just coming out gradually with admitting that they lost a bunch of data here. I think people are just finding out how bad it is. It looks pretty bad. So
So once again, they're a third-party company. This
yeah,
is kind of like the Target attack through the air conditioning company
well,
to
yeah. That's the way of all supply chain attacks. Also, like the one where the Russians got in everybody through the remote access tools. I can't remember the name of it. That was about 10 years ago. They got into the supply chain of a popular remote access tool that all the big corporations were using. And so,
yeah. So again,
yeah,
this is a third-party tool
yep,
that a lot of companies use with Salesforce,
yep,
and they're using their APIs to essentially get in
right.
keys and API keys.
Right. It sounds like
Yeah.
the fundamental security weakness was that they got hold of an API key that let them in. And I guess that was all it took. So
Hmm.
it's,
Interesting.
yeah,
So
yeah.
any idea how they got a hold of the API key?
No, I haven't seen any clear explanation of that
Okay.
yet, but it's early days. It's only been a couple of days since this happened. So I would
Yeah,
expect to
yeah.
have a whole bunch of postmortems coming out over the next weeks. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Okay.
it's a thing. And one of
All
the
right.
corporations use a lot of these weird products I've never even heard of. Like they all used this file sharing product, Move It, which I never heard of. But that was the big one about a year ago. Move It had a breach, and it turned out that everybody you ever heard of was using Move It. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, that's the big news as far as I'm concerned. I got a couple of little.
Well, let me get
Oh,
one
yeah,
for
go
you.
ahead. Yeah.
We'll get a little bit. We'll get a little bit of the politics here.
Oh,
So Microsoft fires 4 workers, 4 employees for on-site protests over company's ties to Israel.
oh yeah. I heard about this. They
How
like
much of
embarrassing. I mean, like
yeah,
standing during presentations and interrupting the presentations and stuff, which is going to get you fired.
well, no, I guess you didn't hear about this one.
Yeah.
This one is the attack where Satya Nadella and Brad are located.
Attack?
And Brad, I think it's Brad Smith. Pardon?
Attack, you say?
Yeah, in other words, they were able, this is kind of interesting in several different ways, but there were Microsoft employees as well as external protesters. And the 4 workers, 4 Microsoft employees badged in, but they don't have privileges to get in. I think it's building 43, not that that matters, where Satya Nadella and Brad Smith are located. That's those are their offices. And they were able to go in there. This is kind of like somewhat analogous of getting into the Pentagon, that
Uh,
they were somehow able to circumvent security and
mm.
get into Brad Smith's office. I guess Microsoft accepted it for a while, and then the protesters started to break things. And that's when the police were called.
Oh, so they like occupied his office. Like I remember back in the Vietnam War, they would do this. They would take over like the administration building or something of the college.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, right.
Well, there's no
But
doubt that
this,
you're going to
but
get fired after doing a thing like that.
yeah, but these are non-public areas,
Right.
so to speak. I
Like
mean,
so they could probably have
right?
even
These,
prosecuted him for trespassing or something if they felt like it.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I don't know how they gained access because their card keys would not allow them access to those areas.
Probably social engineering, convince somebody to let you in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but you got a crowd,
Yeah.
of at least four plus others. I don't know how many
Yeah.
were there, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's interesting. The protests continue, and Microsoft really, from what I'm understanding, did a pretty good job in handling this because what they did was they allowed the protesters to do their thing, but Microsoft said that they've already done an audit, and I'm not exactly sure how they did this, but this is all over Azure being used by Israel in the war.
Yeah.
And according to Microsoft's audit, it's Azure is not being used in any way in the war. I don't know,
Yeah.
but that's what Microsoft is saying.
Well, I know. I mean, Microsoft certainly does do a lot of business with governments and militaries, so it's not unreasonable to think it probably would be used, but maybe not.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. We
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder.
All right, what else you
Yeah.
got, Sam?
Well, they just announced that ChatGPT can now create flashcards to quiz you on any topic. They say this is a great way to learn things. So I didn't know that this was a new feature, but it does sound somewhat useful. And in on the other side, therapists are using ChatGPT. And what happened is a guy had a therapy session over Zoom, and they had like a bandwidth problem. So he said, "Well, let's turn off our cameras." And the therapist accidentally shared his screen. And the guy saw that all he was doing was typing everything he said into ChatGPT and reading him his responses off ChatGPT. So he just didn't tell him and left it on and started like deliberately echoing whatever ChatGPT said, just sort of to troll the guy. And you wonder how often this is going on. Probably a lot. And I would bet not in therapy. I mean, I know um, some people I know work at a company with really unreasonable administration, and they use ChatGPT to write emails. Please write this email apologizing for my absence in the most obsequious, crawling manner possible with praise for their fragile ego. And it'll do that for you. It will create like so your statement you'll make at the next Trump cabinet meeting. You had that. I don't know if you saw that a few days ago. They had another 3.5 hour televised cabinet meeting where all they do is go around the room and every one of them has to say how wonderful Trump is and how he's saving the world. He does that a lot. It's pretty disturbing. It's like something you'd see in North Korea. Anyway,
or on the or on The Apprentice, huh?
well, I never saw that show, but
No, I don't know. I never,
I
yeah,
but
I've
but
never seen it either.
but I think this has got to be some really serious mental illness when you want people to praise you like that. That's why would you even want anyone to do that? That's horrible. Anyway, and I thought it was amazing. I heard on
Yeah.
Sunday
Well,
shows,
speaking,
yeah, on the Sunday shows, I heard Christy Nome, and she said,
wait, so
Los Angeles would have totally burned down, and it would be gone today if Trump hadn't deployed those National Guard soldiers to save it. And even the Meet the Press post said, really? It would have burned down? That's pretty incredible stuff. Because
yeah,
you remember those soldiers didn't do anything. They just hung around playing Angry Birds on their phone. They didn't even go out on the streets and do much of anything in Los Angeles. They just deployed them and then they had no mission for them. They weren't saving the town from burning down. Far from it. Anyway,
Well, in Washington, D.C., when they deployed them, didn't they pick up trash?
yeah, they picked up trash and mulched things, which is
Yeah.
kind of nice, but
Yeah.
hardly
Yeah.
like the place will burn down for lack of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
So speaking of Chat GPT, another
yeah.
one's in the story here. Chat GPT fed a man's delusion with his mother was spying on him and trying to poison him, I think. And
ChatGPT told him his mother was spying on him.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, it'll do that. If
Well,
it'll just echo your sentiment, right? If you start sounding paranoid, it will just encourage you.
right, right. So then he wound up killing her,
Oh boy. Yeah.
and he was a former marketing manager. And ChatGPT told him he's not crazy and encouraged him to
Yeah.
knock off his mother, and then he killed himself.
Well, I'd say it's like the Stanford prison experiment. If your peer group tells you to do something, you'll pretty much just go along with it.
Yeah, Sam, it's kind of interesting. I listened to a podcast called American Scandal.
Mhm.
And remember, I'm going off on a little tangent here, but remember after World War II, Nuremberg trials, the standard defense of the Nazis was I was only following orders.
Which, by the way, is not a bad defense for a soldier. Typically, you'll
I,
get like severely punished, maybe even executed for disobeying orders. So they kind of have a point.
yeah, I would agree. So fast forward 20 years later, so 20, what, yeah, anyway, 23 years later, and America was in the Vietnam War, and it was the My Lai massacre.
Yeah.
And the My Lai massacre is where American soldiers rounded up um, women, children, old men, not so much soldier age people, but they were Vietnamese. They weren't aggressive, they had no weapons, and it was reported that there were North Vietnamese that were attacking them. And so there was a massive massacre that
Yeah.
took place. And the army kind of hid that for a while. There were some journalists that had pictures,
Yeah.
and there was a helicopter pilot that ordered the people on the ground to stop shooting, but they didn't. So he took off. He reported it. And for about a year and a half or so, this was kept secret until finally, I guess on 60 Minutes, Walter Cronkite or no, one of the other ones in that era, 60 Minutes, interviewed, I think it was the helicopter pilot, and then the journalist came out with the pictures. And the excuse that was used was I was just following orders, which he was.
Well, that excuse might work, but then you eventually get to whoever issued the orders and they're responsible. That's the idea.
Yeah.
Although
Yeah.
I think
Well,
there's always been the statement, at least in the American Army, that you shouldn't obey like illegal orders.
right. Right.
So both
Right.
the
Right.
general
Well,
and the soldier would be guilty.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the one that gave the orders on the ground at the village, I think was given a 20-year sentence that was reduced substantially to maybe
Yeah.
5 years or less.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's kind of interesting because here we are. I'm just following orders of Chat GPT.
Well, yeah. And I think it's just the same issue. I mean, this is our so-called intelligence and morality is not really tied to an absolute fixed principle. It's mostly just blending in with the herd. There's an instinct, like the fish all move
Yeah.
together, the antelopes all move together. There's an instinct to just fit in your herd. And that's why I remember when I studied some psychology a while ago, I was sort of horrified to discover that adherence to the standard religion is considered healthy, and failure to accept the standard religion in your group is considered a sign of mental illness. And at first, I was very offended by that. And then I came to realize that's probably correct. I mean, if you don't adopt the general customs of your tribe, that indicates a sort of unhealthy degree of isolation and not caring.
Yeah.
So anyway, And I've got it. I've always been the one that wouldn't conform, so I've sort of resisted being branded as unhealthy, but I decided it was probably reasonable to say, here I am, not being a normal human. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so there's a thing called
What else you have for us?
Yeah, there's a thing called the Ice Block app that has got a lot of news where people can report where ice is in your town, and your activists can like run around and like try to inhibit them or warn the immigrants to flee or something. And the Republicans have gotten really mad about this, Kristi Noem and her gang. And the guy that wrote the app is sort of on the run from the government. So he appeared by video link at Hope. And it turns out this reminds me a lot of during the Arab Spring, there was a guy that made a chat app at the time called CryptoCat, and he was saying this is safer than Twitter, which was not even encrypted at all at the time. And yet he was kind of an amateur, and the app encryption wasn't very good, and all the privacy experts got real mad at him for his app being kind of crappy. And this was very much the same. This guy, one thing is the ICE sightings aren't verified in any way. So a lot of the reports in the app are not actually ICE. In fact, there's a lot of right-wingers on chat rooms talking about deliberately putting in false reports to deflect the activists. And then it turns out that he's not doing the encryption very well. And they got really mad at him because in question and answer, he just revealed that he didn't even understand terms like warrant, canary, reverse engineering, or security through obscurity. So it sounds like CryptoCat all over again. Some well-meaning activist guy made an encrypted thing, but he doesn't really know much about security or encryption, so he didn't do a very good job. And the sort of established privacy community people are mad at him. Anyway, um, that there's a document that is leaked with the Gaza Riviera plan, which they say is pretty extreme, and maybe it's not been officially approved yet, but this is pretty much the plan that made an AI video that Donald Trump posted about 2 months ago, uh, where they plan to get rid of all the Palestinians. And now they say, instead of like Israel just makes it very clear that they're just going to kill them all. And they've killed about 500,000 out of 2.3 million of them so far. But now they're going to be encouraged into voluntary departure into restricted secure zones during reconstruction. Those who own land will be given a digital token to recompense them for their land to be used to finance a new life elsewhere. They'll get like a Trump coin or something. And then they say that so this is what Trump said. We're going to move them to some nice place. And they're promising them $5,000 each and like 4 years of rent, which is very, very reminiscent of 40 acres and a mule. When they freed the slaves, they promised them all 40 acres
Yeah.
and a mule, and they just never gave them anything. So saying they're going to deport 1.8 million Palestinians and they'll give them all a nice place to live, that's what Trump said. I don't believe that at all. They're just going to bulldoze them into a hole. Anyway, so we'll see. This is more or less what's going to happen, though. Israel is having a major offensive. They've cut off what little food and water there is, and they're having yet another major offensive. It does look like the U.S. and Israel are going to pretty much just bulldoze all the Palestinians into a ditch. And every other nation on earth and most of the American citizens and apparently a large portion of the Israeli citizens are all condemning this, but our leaders don't care in either Israel or America. It's pretty
Yeah,
appalling.
I just heard some reports where the way Israel is going to handle this is they're just building housing. And there's a housing project to put in 1,000 new homes for Israelis. And
Right.
they're just going to move in and push the Palestinians out.
That's been their settlement movement for a long time. Yeah. But they're just going to push the
Yeah,
Palestinians into
yeah,
some country that doesn't want them and isn't going to take them. They're
right,
just going to bulldoze them over the edge of a line where they're going to just starve on the other side, I guess,
right,
or just kill
exactly,
them all, which they
exactly.
pretty much a bunch of them are just openly killing them all. So
Yeah,
it's just appalling. Anyway, gruesome
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Uh, there's a discussion on an online, I think it's a Reddit, where a teacher asks, what do you do when students spout alt-right conspiracy theory nonsense? And there are various teachers saying, well, you should discuss it with them. You should just ignore them and go on with the lesson. What should you do? So it was sort of an interesting discussion. That hasn't happened to me, really. I was thinking if it did happen, it would make a pretty good online discussion in like Canvas. And I say we should introduce the concept of fact checking here and like critical thinking. If you make an assertion like, the vaccine is worse than COVID, I say, okay, well, you better find some reference to back that up. And then we can have a discussion about how you research questionable claims and how you decide what the truth is. That could actually be a valuable lesson.
Yeah, the problem with that, Sam, is there are some truths um, that that are correct, and they're called sophisms. But when taken in their entirety, they're incorrect. In other words, you're drawing incorrect conclusions.
Well, yeah,
And an example would be this is kind of an extreme, but um, like a rocket is heavier than air, therefore it can't float or it can't rise up.
it can't not unless you add an engine with power.
Exactly. So you leave the engine with power out of it.
Right. And otherwise, it would have to be a balloon. In order to rise, it would have to be lighter than the air. That's true. So that's
Well, right, but it has to be a balloon
right.
filled with not with
Helium.
lead
Yeah,
or not
that's
with
right.
mercury. It's
That's
got to
right.
be helium or hydrogen. Yeah.
Well, I remember when I
So
was a
so
kid.
again,
Yeah.
those yeah.
I just remember
Th-
when I was
those
a kid.
are
Yeah, go
those
ahead.
are statements that
Yeah.
are true.
Well,
Those are
yeah.
statements that are true,
Well, yeah, in
but
context.
taken out of context.
Yeah, I remember when I was a
Right.
kid, they told me bumblebees can't fly. And then they said, oh, the guy that analyzed that assumed the wings wouldn't move. And so, like an airplane. So, well, okay, that's true. The wings have to move in order for a bumblebee to fly. If they don't move, the
Yeah,
bumblebee
yeah.
will not fly. So, this is that's the kind of thing that I use critical thinking. What exactly did they test here in this study? Like according to my
Exactly.
sister, back in the
Yeah.
early days of COVID, Trump was pushing ivermectin, and my sister told me there were some studies that showed ivermectin actually helped because they were done in other countries where a lot of people had parasites, and the ivermectin gets rid of your parasites and improves your health, including helping you fight off COVID. So it was true that people given ivermectin had better results from COVID, but it
Yeah.
doesn't mean it would
Okay.
be that way in America. Very similar
Yeah.
situation. So there's a guy that made up a completely bogus journalist with a fake name that didn't exist, used AI to write a bunch of articles and submit them to magazines and got 6 of them published in Wired magazine and like Business Insider and other pretty serious magazines. They made a pretty convincing set of fake articles and fake identities and fooled these guys for a while until somebody figured out it was all fake. It reminds me of there's a lot of scandals where there was a journalist just make up stories and pretend to have interviewed people he didn't interview. There's a guy that got away with this for years, I think, at the Washington Post, and it was a huge scandal when they caught him. So now they just use AI
Yeah.
to help do
Yeah.
that. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, how much fact checking can you really do? Like if someone says I went to Gaza and interviewed people, how do you know if they really did that? You can't really test that. So anyway,
True.
yeah,
True.
I got just a couple more information security ones, nothing too hot.
All right. I'll end with got a
Yeah.
pretty fun one.
Yeah.
Funny one here coming up. Anyway, please continue.
Okay. Well, TP-Link routers have a serious 0 day, and it turns out they were told about it more than a year ago, and they've done nothing about it. So it's buffer overflow or something of that sort. Uh, that kind of thing keeps happening. Someone tried taking keratin from sheep's wool and using it to repair teeth. And they say this is awesome. It puts a strong coating on the outside of your teeth and prevents cavities. And they say it's going to be available for humans within 2 years. So that sounds pretty crazy, but I'm interested. If there's some way to prevent tooth cavities, I'm all for it. I
Well,
and
it's called fluoride.
No, it's keratin. We already have fluoride, and I benefited from that. But the new thing is keratin. I think the point is it's a known product that's already used for other things. It just comes from sheep wool, so they probably don't really have to go through a lot of safety tests or anything. Um,
Hmm.
and Microsoft, I thought this is pretty interesting because I did a lot of fiber optics. I went and got certified. I taught fiber optics for a while. And Microsoft has now got a new kind of fiber optics, which is hollow core. And at first I rebelled because the whole point of fiber optics is you go through a dense glass in the middle and you have a less dense glass on the outside. It has to be a higher index of refraction on the inside to get total internal reflection. But this is the opposite. And I went and looked up how it works. It's actually got a layer of silver, like a mirror, outside the air core. And that somehow is so effective that it has lower loss per kilometer than any glass. And of course, the signal goes much faster because the index of refraction is 1.5 for existing fiber optics. And therefore, this moves 50% faster, going at the full speed of light instead of two-thirds of the speed of light. And so they say it's higher bandwidth and less loss, less repeaters. And they've made a way to manufacture this thing. It's got several layers of stuff, but the active ingredient is just an air core and then a silvered surface on the outside to be the mirror. So
I see.
that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. Very interesting.
And some people in Japan say that when they put on the newest Windows 11 update, it bricked their SSDs. So I've seen videos saying, don't put on this update. Here's the update to take down. But Microsoft says they can't reproduce this. And the SSD manufacturer says they can't reproduce this. And they're saying, no, no, must have been not our update that caused that. So people are still screaming and yelling and pointing at each other. This is not clear yet. But it's possible that the latest Microsoft update bricks your SSD under certain conditions. So hopefully that will become more clear as time
Yeah.
passes. This Microsoft has a lot of troubles that
So,
yeah,
Sam, just
yeah.
yeah, no, no, please go ahead.
No, that's it.
Sorry.
Just, there've been a lot of bad Microsoft updates.
Yeah, so I was looking about this on the toothpaste or the uh,
The tooth enamel, yeah.
sheep's wool.
Yeah.
Yeah, from sheep's wool.
Keratin, yeah.
And apparently it's being marketed as a sustainable alternative to fluoride treatments by not just slowing decay, but actively restoring lost tooth material
Yeah, sounds
with
good.
products. Yeah, sounds good, but I wonder if this is sort of a distraction
I don't know.
from
I don't know why you would see it as an alternative to fluoride. I would think of it as in addition to fluoride, but I don't know.
yeah, that's what makes me think that I'm not sure that this is going to be that promising.
Well, yeah, that's the problem. And there's always a ton of loss between the early tests and an actual product. Often there are reasons why it's not really safe enough or good enough or cheap enough or something, and it never really becomes a product.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see. And
Yeah.
that just
That
like
that
everything remains a question, which
but
is
this
being
is one of the
told.
great science fiction things. You just squirt some goo in your mouth and you don't have to go to the dentist. That would be awesome.
Yeah, it's but it's called toothpaste with
Well,
fluoride.
we have it and it helps, but it'd be nice to have something that worked even better so you didn't have to go there and get drilled ever. I'd like that.
All right.
That's it.
So
Well,
Sam, you got any more? I have one more.
go ahead.
All right. So Taco Bell is back in the news again. And if you remember a couple months ago, I told you I went to Taco Bell and I tried to order a 7-layer burrito. And I think I got 70 burritos was
Oh,
what was given. And
because
I had to go back and
they're using AI in the box, right?
they're using AI.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know if this was a prank or not, but some man ordered a bottle of water and got charged 18,000 bottles of water.
Yeah, I heard about that. And they're saying they're going to quit using that particular brand of AI, I think.
Well, somebody has to say, wasn't the easier answer that, hey, AI, if somebody orders more than 10 bottles of water,
Yeah.
question it?
Yeah. This is the thing with all these AI deployments, AI agents in companies, people are just deploying them and they don't have any security guardrails. And obviously, that would be a good one. Just make
Yeah.
sure that whatever the answer it produces is within a reasonable range. That would be nice.
All right. Now, pardon me. I have one last story that I'll leave you with.
Yeah.
NVIDIA says two mystery customers have accounted for nearly 40% of Q2 revenue.
Well, yeah, I think I hear about like Elon Musk wants to build a AI center with like 400,000 GPUs, and OpenAI does too. I would imagine just those two customers are most of the customer base.
So, Sam, it's not me. It sounds like it's not you either, huh?
Well, yeah, it sure isn't me. But those companies been talking about these insanely expensive, huge deployments of GPUs where they even have to build their own power plants because they're so huge they can't even power them from the grid. So
Yeah.
there can't be very many people doing that. And they're clearly hogging up all the GPUs to do that.
Yeah. I mean, they're the richest company in the world right now.
Yeah. And there's a couple of companies that are building gigantic data centers, OpenAI, and I think
Yeah.
Microsoft related to them, and uh, and Elon Musk, and maybe a couple of others. I think Anthropic's building one. I think Meta's building one. But there's only a few of these things at that
So
scale.
who do you think the two mystery customers are?
Well, it's got to be among those four. It's got to be either Elon or Meta or OpenAI or Anthropic. That's pretty much got to be. I think it was the only people it could possibly be. And I think by far the biggest is Elon and OpenAI.
So my guess would have been Meta.
It could be Meta. That's why I'm not quite sure how big Meta's rollout is. Meta has had some
Yeah.
problems with the rollout. They first hired a bunch of engineers, then they froze all funding. Now they just talked about breaking their AI division into four separate areas. It reminds me of the way Microsoft keeps reorganizing every couple of years. They're having another, but they have said
Yeah.
that they are going to make personal super intelligence like within a year. So your phone is going to be smarter than you are. That's what they
We'll
think.
see.
I know that's what they're pushing. I think those of us that are not blinded by Silicon Valley bullshit have realized they're never even going to make a phone that is equal to us anytime soon. This is all crap. But they're all vastly overselling the promise of this technology.
Well, Sam, I'm going to put that new phone, right, that's going to come out, that's going to be smarter than I am,
Yeah.
behind the wheel of my self-driving car.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it really worked, that would be possibly wonderful. It would possibly wipe us out. I mean, then you'd have the Terminator future and you worry about that. All this scary science fiction stuff would happen. But I think none of that is going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see. Experiment in progress. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's it for
Okay.
me this
Well, that's
time.
it for me too.
All right, Sam. Thank you.
Okay.